Hottie, I've made no secret of the fact that the Hammer and I have made Floyd's of Leadville Recovery Protein one of the cornerstones of our training and racing regimen.
Right. A cup of ice, as I recall, 2 cups of Floyd's Vanilla Recovery Protein, a cup of chocolate milk, and a blender. We all get it now, Fatty. We've got the recipe.
That's right. Here's the thing, though. That works great for home and for overpackers like Lisa and me, who literally, and you know this, we bring our espresso machine and a blender with us on trips. So we go a little crazy, but that may not work as well for folks who, pack a little light, people who are taking a carry-on their flight.
The Fatty Leadville kitchen is a sight to see, folks. There's some major appliances moved in every year for the Leadville Trail 100. And Floyd's, though, they have a whole suite of recovery CBD products to help you recover and relax that are a little more portable and in single-size servings, no less. Soft gels, tinctures, balms, creams, and gems, both with full spectrum and full spectrum and isolate.
Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of the new full spectrum cola flavored gems. But what I've started bringing with me for post-ride recovery, now that I'm going back into the office for my day job, is also, when I just can't bring the kitchen sink with me, is Floyd's On-the-Go Recovery Tonic. It's a single-serving shot. It comes in 2 flavors, grape and orange, 50 milligrams of THC-free CBD. That's not easy to say. They are small, they're sealed, they're easy to toss in your bag and use after a ride or whenever you need. They taste great, actually. I especially like the grape one. And, of course, they're invaluable in helping you recover.
Our listeners can get a great deal on Floyd's of Leadville tonics and all other products to help you relax and recover. Just head to floydsofleadville.com and use the code FATTY at checkout for a 15% discount.
And thanks to Floyd's of Leadville for being the title sponsor of the show.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race presented by Floyd's of Leadville. It is season 4, episode 22 of the show that breaks down, builds up, gets you ready, and freaks you out for the highest and hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. I'm Michael Houghton, Hottie to most.
And I am Fatty, and I'm happy to say we are back with a storytelling episode in this, our storytelling season. We've had a lot of stories in this show about how the race has changed people's lives. And today we are talking with my daughter, Melisa Rollins, because this race has changed her life as of last week.
She is the newest member of the women's pro cycling team 2024, thanks in part to a blisteringly fast time in Leadville and then the next day in Steamboat. We're talking with her, about her race, how she went from a 10-plus hour racer to a sub-8-hour racer, and what comes next for her.
But before we jump into that interview on this show, Hottie, I actually want to direct our listeners to another show that you and I recently did, the Marginal Gains podcast, presented by Silka.
Yeah, Fatty and I, along with Silka honcho Josh Portner, just recently posted an in-depth conversation with Shimano road brand manager Nick Legan and road and gravel product manager Dave Lawrence about the brand new Shimano Durace 9200 and Ultegra 8100 group sets.
Obviously, those are road groups, and this is primarily a dirt-based show. But we think you will see where things are headed with this conversation. And there is some pretty meaningful overlap between what roadies and mountain bikers are going to be riding with.
Plus, we have a sneaking suspicion that a lot of our listeners don't ride mountain bikes exclusively.
Yeah, I wouldn't be too terribly surprised to find a road bike in most of our quivers. I know, Hottie, you and I each have one.
At least one. So check out this conversation over at pod.link/MG. And of course, you can always learn more about all of Shimano's brakes, wheels, and components. The new Durace, the new Ultegra is all at bike.shimano.com.
Our guest this episode is Melisa Rollins. She is the women's overall winner in the 2021 Breckenridge Firecracker 50. She set a new women's record for the fastest lap ever at the 12 Hours of Mesa Verde, and she took 50th. She took 5th at the 2020 Belgian Waffle Ride, where I happen to know she was the only pro riding on a used bike with a cracked frame that she had just recently purchased on eBay.
All right. Well, I think that problem will be corrected for 2022. Melisa took 6th overall for women in the Leadville 100, both in 2019 and 2021, though with significantly different times, and we'll get into that.
Yes, we will. And she took 2nd place in the first ever Leadboat Challenge, which is doing the Leadville 100 on Saturday, followed by the Steamboat Gravel Race the very next day, less than 24 hours later, on Sunday.
Melisa Rollins, so good to have you. I haven't seen you since the feed zone, I think. No, I saw you at the finish line at the 2021 Leadville Trail 100, where you came in 6th place. That was awesome. But, I was standing there at the finish line, and something occurred to me when the announcer called out your name as you came across the line. And that is this. Everyone who doesn't know you well, or even some people who do know you well, seem to get your first name wrong. It is Melisa, right? How often does this happen to you? What do you do about it when it does happen?
In fact, my boyfriend currently, he knew me as Melisa for the first 3 months of dating me. And I did not correct him for a while. He actually introduced me to his parents as Melisa. So that was an awkward conversation. My name is Melisa. And I actually briefly went by Mel. I still will respond to Mel. I like Mel.
And Fatty, I haven't told you this little anecdote too. As I have, had a chance to meet Melisa, I'm also learning guitar these days, right? And one of my favorite songs to play on guitar is an Allman Brothers tune called Melissa. So I'm at home here singing Melissa, and I'm getting ready to interview Melisa, and I'm getting a little screwed up myself here. So if I somehow break into Melisa, please excuse me up front.
Well, do you want to know what I will do if you accidentally call me Melisa?
Yeah, I do, actually, because it could be dangerous.
I will say nothing. I will absolutely not tell you that you were wrong, because that is the trend.
Let's hear it for Melisa Rollins. Nice ride, Melisa.
In 2nd place, Melisa Rollins.
Next finisher. How about Melisa Rollins, 23 years young, Salt Lake City, Utah, crushing it out there today. Way to go, Melisa.
Well, it's very pro of you, by the way, which we're going to get to. You have become a pro cyclist here since you and I last talked. Officially, I think you're on a pro team. We're going to get to that story in a second, but let's backtrack to more of the beginnings, the Melisa beginnings in mountain biking and before. As I understand it, if your bio is correct, and this is new for you too, you now have a bio out there, which is cool. You're actually a high school swimmer and a soccer player and just other sports other than mountain biking. Now, it's unavoidable. I think in your household, living there with air fatness and your mom, the hammer, you're just going to be subjected to Leadville this and Leadville that and mountain biking this and mountain biking that. So at what point did you go, okay, maybe I give that flat bar thing, that 2-wheeled thing a try?
Well, first off, I was absolutely not interested in mountain biking for probably the first 18 years of my life. I even tried it. I was not interested. My parents took me, they had the audacity to bring me on some green trails that had, 3 rocks. And I managed to hit all 3 rocks and wreck. I'm pretty sure I broke handlebars pretty early on in the mountain biking. I did not have good first moments of mountain biking. However, I did get into it eventually. But I started in high school. I always played soccer. I started off as a soccer player. I worked really hard. I am not sure I know many who worked harder than I did. However, I was not good. I like swimming in the summer. I was on a swim team. And then I kind of got into it more when I was beginning high school. And so I juggled a little bit of that and soccer at the same time. But I swam very competitively in high school. I did my best to be the best athlete I could, but it didn't really seem like it paid off all that much. That being said, I did make the state team, which I was the first woman at my high school to ever make state. So only 24 people for each event qualify for state. And I was the first woman from my high school to make it. So it did pay off. That being said, I was last. I was dead last at state.
And Melisa needs to give herself a little bit of credit here. It's the discipline is very much a like mother, like daughter kind of thing. The intensity, the drive, it was something that was going to eventually pay off when a lot of discipline and the ability to stick things out really starts making a difference. And I think that is why endurance sports actually eventually drew her in, because it for sure was not her parents, right? She grew up hearing about Leadville, but it was not until she herself had a chance to do the race herself that she started really, I guess, getting bit by the bug. So for your first year doing the Leadville 100, you finished in 10 hours and 12 minutes, which is a really good first race. I mean, I think probably a lot of the folks listening to this podcast, that's a very similar time to what they're interested in. In 2017, you had way more of you'd been bitten enough by the bug of that success that you actually moved to Leadville for the summer, where you worked as a bartender at the dearly departed, our favorite, it was one of my favorite places, the Periodic Brewery. And you were all set up for a much faster year. Tell us what happened.
There is some single track behind the college that is kind of a perfect, hour and a half ride where you ride a little bit of the mineral belt and then you jump on some trail and then you get to go down probably my favorite downhill in Leadville, which Elk Run, I think. Elk Run is the name of the downhill. That is my bane now. However, so I was leading a group of you guys on this ride because I knew a really awesome route a few days before the Leadville 100 that I was getting ready to potentially have a really good race at. I thought that I was in really good shape. I had just done the stage race and placed second there with a cumulative time of 8:09. So I knew that there was potential for me to get under 9 hours, which was kind of my goal at that point. So I was leading a group of you guys on this ride down Elk Run, and I got a little sendy on the downhill, which if you have no context, now you do. I like to go fast downhill, and that was primarily what I did when I got into mountain biking. But I'm not sure. I think I went down the wrong line. There was like a little rut and I was going really fast, probably 20 to 25 miles an hour on this downhill. And I just nailed a rock on my quad after, coming off my bike. And I was in the lead. So naturally, I just tried to hop back up on the bike and pretend like I had not wrecked. But it was weird. I took one rotation of the pedal on the bike and I was like, oh no, this is not right. And my leg locked up and I couldn't pedal. And I had gotten to an opening in the meadow and I waited for everybody to kind of catch up. And I was like under my sunglasses, I was like trying to hide it, but I was like sobbing. And no one really noticed at first, but then, we're all in a group and getting ready to move on to the next portion of the single track. And I'm like, I have tears coming out under my sunglasses. And I told my mom and I told her I couldn't pedal. And so we figured out a way to just coast down the mountain and someone came and picked me up. But I'm not sure I bent my leg for maybe 2 more days. And then this was probably on the Wednesday before the Leadville, and I couldn't bend my leg after that until Friday. And so I attempted to race the Leadville 100 on that Saturday, but I pulled out at Twin Lakes.
So that was 2017, a bad year. 2018, you came back and had even bigger plans, working at Periodic Brewery again, which was awesome. And you had what I would call an audacious plan.
So after this wreck, I had lived in Leadville. I had huge ambitions for this race. I lived there. I wanted to do well. I don't know if winning was anywhere in my vocabulary for that race, but I wanted to do well. And I spent my entire summer riding and training exclusively on the race course. I think I climbed St. Kevin's 32 times that summer. And I was so devastated that I didn't even get to finish that I kind of needed a change. I did a little tour of Colorado after that wreck incident when I could, ride again and I was feeling better. And I decided I wanted to maybe try something new, which that was running. And as a little bit of a background in my running history, I played soccer, obviously in high school. And I had a little ambitious goal where I wanted to run a road marathon on 4 weeks of training. It took me 6 hours and 15 minutes and I walked it. Yeah. most of it. Also barfed a lot. It was horrible. But that was my background in running. I decided, maybe I want to start running instead of biking so that I could explore a little bit more of Colorado, this state that I had lived in and not seen any of.
And so you signed up for the Lead Woman.
I did sign up for the Lead Woman.
Absolutely. I mean, that is something that I imagine every person who has ever raced the Leadville 100 has at least considered just the difficulty of all of that. And you did well. I mean, you sort of set the table here as if you were going to do miserably bad, but you didn't. You, looking at your stats, you did the trail marathon in 6 hours and 13 minutes.
Faster than my road marathon.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you had improved and done some training. You did both the Silver Rush run and mountain bike. And those are on consecutive days, and with a combined fastest time of all of the women, giving you the Silver Queen title, which is an honorary thing, but still really cool. And then you came back and did the Leadville 100 in 10 hours flat, and which is a fantastic time for someone who is looking to do the Lead Woman as opposed to focusing on just the biking race. You did the 10K, did that very fast. Second place of all of the women doing the Lead Woman that year, and then you had the Leadville run. And I kind of wanted to rush you to that because anyone who has ever seen the Leadman Lead Woman race, of course the 100-mile running race is the real pinnacle of that thing, and it is not something that should ever be taken lightly. And I'm for sure not saying you took it lightly, but you had one of those moments that all of the people who were around, I think, will never forget. It was one of the most dramatic moments ever. And I kind of had a front door view of it as you were doing really well for the first 75, 85 miles of it. And you came into the May Queen aid station, the last aid station of the race. Yeah. And everyone who has ever done the rides right by that aid station right before you do that climb up to Carter. It is a critical part of the run because it kind of means that you have survived going back up over the power line and down Sugarloaf, and on foot. That is a much bigger deal than on the bike.
Also the pinnacle, because for most runners, at least most people that finish between 25 and 30 hours, which is most runners. Yeah. That is when the sun starts coming up.
That's right. And it was starting to get light, and your mom was hanging out at the aid station, ready to take care of you. And I was just out of my mind looking up the road because the cutoff queen or whatever she is called, she is standing there and she says, I'm going to start walking backwards to the timing mat, and anyone who doesn't cross before I do is done. And she's walking back slowly, and I see you running.
Yellow jacket.
Yeah, she's wearing yellow rain pants and a yellow jacket. There had been a little bit of rain, and she is getting close. And I see you making running motions with your arms and walking slowly to the aid station. And you get there. You cross before she does, but by bare moments. And then if you and your mom take off together to finish this race, and you are still only bare seconds ahead of the cutoff time. And at that point, I
don't even think that I made it technically, but
there might have been some kindness there in letting you through, but you make it to the, really, I would say to the boulevard.
Well, as a frame of reference, you have 4 hours to go 13 miles.
Right. Which is
that final cutoff.
Which is normally not that fast. But of course, you are smoked. You are absolutely smoked. You made it to the top of the boulevard 3 to 4 hours after the cutoff. I mean, you were walking up the boulevard at about a half mile an hour, and you got to the top eventually. And one of the race officials gave you a bouquet and said, "This is your finish line." And we were also grateful because we could not imagine walking yet another mile with you.
Because it would have taken 3 hours.
We'd still be there. Anyway, so that's a lot of backstory for this. And I think it is worth flashing forward to 2019. You and I crossed the finish line arm in arm. That was a pretty cool moment.
Almost an hour and a half faster.
Almost an hour and a half faster than your previous best time. 8 hours, 38 minutes.
Correct.
That was awesome. That was 2019, 2000. And in between then and now, something obviously changed.
Well, I would argue that something changed between the run year and the 838 year with you. So 2017 and 2018, I finished the run, was completely broken. I haven't run in a run race since that day. And I probably, no, I'm not sure that I will go back to that. Maybe. In 2018, I decided I was not a runner again. After I had decided I was not a biker, but I was back to a biker. And I decided I wanted to take it more seriously. And I hired a coach. And I've been working with this coach, Sarah Kaufman, since that day that I decided that I want to be a biker again. And in a short 6 months of working with Sarah, I went from not really riding to an 838. So just with a little bit of structured training, I progressed in my Leadville time to an 838 where I finished with you. And then in between 2019 and 2021, which is this year, there's obviously been a lot of time, but I have continued to work with her. And just what's wild is that in 2020, I would have had a really awesome time too, because that was my breakout year. However, there hasn't been a lot of racing, or there was not a lot of racing in 2020, and I didn't get to show any of it. So while it looks like 2021, I just came out of nowhere, I didn't. I've been working for 2 years really hard for this. So that's what changed.
And to recap those times, 2019 was 838, 206th overall, 6th female, second in the 20 to 29 category. Then 2021, we turned in a 748.39, 55th overall, 6th female again. Again, the ladies field was just stacked this year. It was just incredible who showed up. So even though you didn't move up in the overall ladies placings, it was obviously on time. It was way better, and considering the field, a lot better than your 2019 time. And of course, you're the 6th pro female as well there. Interesting note too, folks, that I was looking at, you probably noticed, Melisa, that I'm following you on Strava now, and I did that for podcast reasons. I wanted to see what your moving time was on 2021, and it's nearly the same as your finish time, your chip time, which means you just kept moving the whole day. Like there was no stopping, no nothing. It was like
I did not
stop. In 2019, you stopped. In fact, we gave you a feed in 2019. 2021, you were on the fly the whole way, which is just totally pro, totally incredible. To totally admire that. What I want to know though is what did your coach give you? What were the intervals? Was it just a mindset? Give us a couple of things that your coach gave you to push you into that next level.
There was obviously a progression with this, and I wouldn't recommend everyone going out and doing this before a Leadville. But I think 2 weeks before Leadville, I had about 4.5 to 5 hours over the course of a week of tempo, just specific tempo, and not just tempo. It was more of in the sweet spot range, but I had 3 or 4 workouts of 3x30 or 3x20, variations of such. And I think it got me ready. I just in the last 2 months right before Leadville happened this year, I had increase in my FTP, and it was kind of just amazing. I'm not sure. I really thrive off of big, hard weekends. So give me a really, really hard, crazy race and a week to recover, and I come back way strong comparatively. Like I'll increase my power in successive workouts after that.
And what will you do in between those hard weekends?
So, for example, after Leadboat, I took 4 days completely off, and then I rode some endurance miles, and then the next Monday, so a week from the Monday after Leadboat, I was back to doing intervals, and they were at numbers higher than anything I'd seen all year. And
again, back to these. So she would have you do these sweet spot intervals. That's like that's been the core of what has elevated your game.
I think so. We throw in a little bit of VO2, a little bit of threshold work as well, just to mix it up. But I can't tell you how many times I did 3x30 this year.
Yeah. Those are so terrific, folks. I can't tell you. I mean, personally speaking, my best fitness as a cyclist was when I was time trialing a lot. And time trialing is, well, it's not exactly sweet spot intervals. It's something harder than that, but it's the same idea. Like you're trying to go hard for a long time, for like 40 minutes, an hour, or you split it up into 2:30s like Melisa was doing in her intervals. And that type of fitness plays in so many different situations. Maybe not in a short mountain bike race, but in anything that's over a couple of hours long. If you have time trial fitness, if you have sweet spot fitness, you can take that a lot of places and do quite well, as Melisa has proven with 2019 and 2021 finishes, which were terrific. But Fatty, I think we want to get into the specifics of this 2021 race, right? Because that was mind-blowing.
Yeah, for sure. Give us, the short version of the story of your day. And then, you've already referred to it, but that was a day where you also had the expectation that you would be racing the next day as well, the Leadboat. So let's start with Leadville, and then let's talk about why you even did the Leadboat.
So Leadville this year, I felt like I was a little bit of an underdog. Nobody knew who I was. I was in a local bike shop kit, standing among all of these women who were getting photos and videos taken of them at the start line. And I'm just like, hey, I'm over here. And
it can be seen as an advantage to come in without having a target on your back, to be able to come in under the radar. So yeah, you came in an unknown, but what you're bringing to this race. And also you have way more experience than most of these people. I don't think anyone else had actually lived there. So yeah, the table is set for you to do some surprising.
So I started off with the typical downhill start. I was in the Silver Corral, so I didn't really get to experience the waves. I guess hopefully everyone else got to experience what I did, simply because of waves. because it was not crazy. I didn't have to put a foot down ever, which I think I've had to do in the past when I started. I've started in blue before, and I'm pretty sure I had to put a foot down on Kevins. But this year, no foot down. I just tried to stay within myself. That being said, I think so.
So are you marking the other fast women?
I wish I could have. I couldn't start as fast as them. So the lead women, the 5 who came in ahead of me, they took off from the gun, and I watched as I actually came by Katarina Nash, who led for a lot of the race. She had some kind of mechanical on St. Kevins, and I went by her and I was like, whoa, that's weird. And then, a minute later, she's like flying past me, and I was like, oh, that's the speed they go at. Okay. I'm not sure I can do that one. So I just watched her go. And, with my experience at Leadville, I kind of was like, ooh, well, these girls, maybe they don't know that it's hard, that this is a hard race. Mm-hmm. And there's a chance one of them maybe has a nutritional error, and I get to capitalize on that. So I just stayed within myself. I was able to ride my way. I think I was probably in 10th or so at the top of St. Kevins, and I rode my way.
No, you were 8th.
Okay, 8th.
You were 8th. Okay. I checked. Well, just to tell folks what was happening, I listened to an interview with Mariah Wilson, Melisa, too. She was talking about just this section of the course, and she said, indeed, Katarina was the one who laid down the law as you folks, and once she got fixed, whatever it was she needed to get fixed, she's the one that laid down the law as you folks went up and over Kevins. And by the time it got to Carter, it sounded like it was all sorted out already.
Yeah, and that's kind of unfortunate. I'm not sure what happens to me at altitude. This also happened to me at Firecracker 50, but I just can't go into that red zone. My heart rate never went really that high at Leadville, actually, which I have a really high heart rate. I usually get into the above 200 range, and mine was barely at 190 for this portion of the race, which you would expect maybe this would be the hardest part of the race. Maybe it would have gone higher, but I just can't do it. I can't get it up there at altitude, I think. So,
I mean, that's Leadville for you, right?
Yeah.
We've, your heart rate's going to have a high floor and a low ceiling.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, that's not at all unusual, and something that, what you were experiencing, all of us were experiencing, just much slower.
I think going forward, maybe I would do some more specific altitude training, and maybe that would help. But however, those girls are freaking fast. It's crazy. So I worked my way from 8th. I rode with a few women up the Sugarloaf climb. I worked with them on the road. It was awesome.
Do you remember who?
Yeah, Casey Armstrong.
Wow.
I caught Serena Bishop. It was really cool to ride with her. And we then made it to the fish hatchery. Then we got in different groups, I guess, on the road. And I didn't see her again, unfortunately. But we got to Pipeline, and I caught this must have been, she was in 6th place, because I don't think I caught anyone after this. So I was in 7th going into Pipeline, and I caught the woman in 6th, who was Jasmine Dewering, who is on Team 2024. And she is fresh off the plane from Tokyo. She was 4th at the Olympics in track, some distance of track. And I didn't know who she was. I just knew she was in a 2024 kit. So I ride up next to her, and I was like, wow, you're freaking strong. And she looks back at me, and she's like, who is this girl? But it's awesome. She's super nice. And we rode together all the way until almost Columbine. And at that point, I was in 6th. And I climbed Columbine just within myself, and felt good. I felt like I had executed my plan to eat perfectly. And once I passed Hottie at Columbine, at the bottom of Columbine, which my hand up was perfect. You guys had backups in order. I think Hottie handed me a bottle, and just in case I fumbled it in some way, we had Mrs. Hottie about 50 feet down the way where I could grab a second one if needed. But I didn't need to. It was great. I made my way up Columbine, and about halfway up, I see a rider coming down and I was like, who is that? And it was Brandon Dykstra-House from the feed.
Oh.
I know. But he was so happy. I was like, why are you happy? What are you doing? Why are you smiling? You're going downhill. Obviously not in the lead. Why are you happy? And he looks at me and I just think he's a happy guy. He's happy to see I was there. And he's like, the girls, they're just right up there, probably 30 seconds. And I was like, wow. I guess one of them did have a nutritional error. I'm about to catch him. So I put my head down, keep going. They were not 30 seconds in front of me.
30 seconds if you're going downhill.
Maybe. So. That's like a mile. I was like, when am I going to catch these girls? I keep turning the corner. There's just men in front of me. It's not women. And I keep making my way up. And then finally, somewhere on the goat trail, I see all 5 of them come down. And I was like, well, I'm in 6th. So no, none of them faltered on this climb.
Yeah.
We're going to get back to Melisa in a second, but Hadi, you and I have been talking about this show, not just this episode, this whole show, and whether there should be a season 5. Have we said everything we have to say about this race?
I think based on our listener response, particularly the response we got in Leadville, and how this race is changing, and the fact that there are still a lot of stories left to tell, we look like we will be back for a season 5.
Yeah, and DNA is going to be back with us with a brand new Leadville podcast kit. In fact, between now and the final episode of the season, we are planning on going to, I should say, a nice round 25 episodes, so 3 more after this one. We're going to work with DNA to design a full new kit. Jersey, bibs, arm warmers, and socks, as well as a nice cool t-shirt.
And we're going to work with DNA the same way our listeners can. Giving them some ideas, first of all, have them give us some designs, make some refinements, and then get them made. Hopefully, it'll be a kit our listeners will like enough to wear at the 2022 starting line.
Yeah, and we're going to actually ask you to join us in this process. Next week, next episode, we're going to have some first pass designs that we get from DNA, and we're going to put them up for a vote. It'll give you a sense of how design collaboration with DNA works. By the time we get to the final episode of this season, we will have a final design and a store ready to go for pre-orders.
Of course, you can work with DNA on your own kits in the way Fatty and I for the Season 5 Leadville kit. Just go to DNAcycling.com to learn more.
And be sure to tell them the Leadville podcast sent you. Hadi, of course, Melisa is going to be racing with new gear from her new sponsor next year. I think it is worth mentioning, however, what wheels, bars, stems, and seat posts she did so amazing on this year. Just like the Hammer and I, Melisa was rolling on Envy.
Yeah, I saw that her bike for the Leadville 100 had M5 wheels, an M5 bar, and an M6 stem.
Yeah, and for Steamboat Gravel Race, she was riding on G23 wheels and with the Envy gravel handlebar. 250 hard miles in 2 days, all without a glitch. That's Envy in a nutshell.
Check out Envy's bars, stems, wheels, posts over at Envy, that's ENVE.com. All right, let's get back to the star of the show, our conversation with Melisa Rollins.
So obviously you were very strong in a very strong, kind of isolated, but still with really amazing racers. What was your turnaround time for Columbine? And you mentioned that you were nailing your nutrition. Tell us what your nutrition plan was. How much were you eating and how often?
So I started the race with a Camel Pack. I had it filled 1.5 liters with scratch mix. So I just didn't want to deal with bottles at that point. And it paid off for me. I liked having it and not having to grab a bottle or anything. I did SIS gels for the first 2 hours of the race. I think all the way until pipeline. I had only SIS gels and scratch mix. And then once I made it onto the road into a group, I knew it was going to kind of settle down. And I had a Larabar, I think, some kind of food. I've heard that you're supposed to eat food. So I was like, here's some food. But I've also practiced with this food. This is not the first time I had this food.
Good.
So I incorporated some whole food whenever I could on the road, anytime it was flat, up until Columbine. And then I switched back to chews and gels, 100% for the rest of the way. And I'm really dedicated about making sure to eat every 30 minutes. I think that's super important.
About how much?
I eat a gel,
Mm-hmm.
something around 100 calories. I try. And I really like the SIS gels, anything that's isotonic, because I've had problems in the past with trying to digest things that are not isotonic.
Mm-hmm. And they just go down easier, right? You don't have to wash them down because they are a little bit less thick,
Yep.
right? Yeah,
And
totally get that.
yeah, so I switched back to gels once I hit the Columbine climb. It's just so much easier. I don't know how anybody eats something that is like a rice cake on that climb. I don't know how anybody
I
does
don't know
that.
either.
I'll just set the scene for folks, and that is, at this point, Melisa is chasing the eventual winner, Rose Grant, Mariah Wilson, Sarah Sturm, Hannah Fidchamp, and Katarina Nash, who'd been driving the pace all day. In fact, she went up and down Columbine, still in first place. I mean, these are the 5 ladies. This is not just any group she's after. These are the 5 ladies that she's after at this point. And by my count and by my calculation from Twin Lakes Alternate, you weren't losing any time. They weren't gaining anything. You weren't losing anything to them either as you were making your way through Twin Lakes Alternate. So you were holding your own through this area. It sounds like they just got away at Carter or somewhere on Keevans and just held you off for a very long time throughout the day.
Oh, I do have one thing to mention about what I remember between Columbine and Powerline, which is a big section. But I remember that when I got onto the pavement, there was this crazy crosswind, and I was in a group of maybe 8, no, maybe more. It was a lot. I was pretty lucky with how many people I was around for the majority of the race. But we got to that section, and I swear that everyone forgot how to do a pace line. It was insane. We would have one person on the front, they'd pull off to the side, and we'd just melt into the background. Everyone wanted to be in the back.
And so take us over the beast of the day, Powerline. What are you thinking as you come by Blake? Blake is your brother. He's there to feed you at Powerline. I think you take a feed on the fly there. And then what's your mindset as you're trying to finish this thing off?
So I kept talking to people, because I do that. I talk way too much in races. It's crazy. But I kept telling people, like, you might go into an alternate dimension going up this climb. I know I have. It's insane. It doesn't matter how fresh you are. You teleport into the abyss. And I didn't do that. I made it up Powerline. I cleaned it. I passed people walking. Someone said I looked really good. I was like, thank you. I do. And I made it to Pizza Man, and he asks me if I know Ray Landry for some reason, which I do. And everyone knows Ray. He told me to tell him hi. He didn't even say good job. He just said, tell Ray hi. Okay, I will.
Hi, Ray.
Hi, Ray. And I continued up Powerline. I continued to feel really good. I knew at that point that I was on a sub 8 pace, which is kind of what I was shooting for the day. But I didn't really know if it was possible. However, I knew that if I just climbed at a normal pace, that I would make it. And I kept looking around me, and everyone else was kind of going the same pace. So I figured I was going a normal pace. It didn't feel very fast, but I felt good. And I continued on. I made it up to the top of the climb and down the descent. And I made it onto Hagerman Pass Road and started descending. I was with 2 other men. And one guy who I caught jumped onto our train, and he looks at, there were 3 of us, me, one guy that I had descended all of Powerline with, and then we caught a third. So the guy I descended Powerline with, he looks at me, and we're working together really well. We were alternating pulls, and we catch this guy, and he just looks like he's blown. And we ask him to pull through, and he's like, I cannot. I've completely combusted. And we make it down to the bottom of May Queen. And all of a sudden, seems like this guy has come back to life, and he shoots off the front of us. And we're like, oh, well, I guess he feels better. So we gave him a nice pull, a nice little tow, which is fine. But there's more to that story with that guy. So we continue up the climb, me and this other guy. We were alternating. We made it to that wonderful Garmin aid station where they gave me a water
handing
bottle.
out little Cokes, yeah.
I don't think I took a Coke, but I did take a water bottle. Or they filled my water with, and I was going so slow that they could just grab my bottle, fill it up, and hand it back to me without any sort of crazy movements. But made it to the top of Carter, and I could see that guy that had,
Did it shut off the front?
Yeah, had shot off the front. It's like, I just wish I could catch him. Kept seeing him. Make it to the top of Keevens. Ride down Keevens. I can still see him. This time, I see him with someone. It's like, wonder who that is. So at this point, he's probably maybe 0.2 of a mile, 1/5 of a mile ahead of me. And he's with someone. I can see it's a girl.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can see someone. They're less than a minute ahead of me. And so we make it to the boulevard. I'm climbing up the boulevard. And I'm like, that's Katarina Nash. That's who exploded. Because this whole time I had been baking on someone exploding and me catching them. Because that was the only way I was going to make it top 5 at this race. And the whole way up the boulevard, I could see her working with this guy. I was like, no. And then I never caught her. But I tried as hard as I could. And I kept playing through the scenario of if I caught her, there's no way I would have out-sprinted her. But for any reference to people who don't know Katarina Nash, she has been on many World Cup podiums for, I think, mountain biking and cyclocross. For sure, cyclocross. She is a phenomenal racer, and I've always looked up to her. And it's just remarkable to be in the same universe as her at a race.
Well, your pipeline inbound time was 2 hours, 19 minutes. And you were catching Katarina. I mean, she only beat you by a minute overall. It took her 2:23 to get home from the pipeline feed zone. Obviously, she ran into some type of issues. She was starting to come backwards. And you weren't too far off of Hannah Finchamp's pace either, coming from Powerline inbound. She did a 2:21 pipeline inbound was her time, 2:21. So you were certainly putting time into people coming back. Now, Rose Grant was crazy. For context, Rose Grant, who won the race, rode pipeline inbound to the finish in 2 hours and 6 minutes. So she that's as fast as Nate Whitman does it, Fatty. I mean, she was just flying coming in. She really timed her effort precisely. But Melisa, our guest today, really a good effort coming in late in the day. And that is, as we talked about before here, Fatty, that is where you want to lay it on the line. That's where you want to do your business. And you're going to determine your ultimate fate probably from their inbound.
So you finish the race and you have another race the next day. You have essentially 12 hours to make the 2-hour drive to Steamboat, unpack, and get ready because you have 140 miles of gravel the next day. Really, the big question is why? Why did you want to do that? And I mean, that question I would ask to anyone who's doing it.
I don't know. There's a lot of really cool women doing it. And I thought that maybe I had a shot at it. It seemed like something up my alley, after doing Leadman. This was kind of maybe not equivalent, but in the same parallel universe as that. And I was intrigued by it. It sounded cool. I'd never actually ridden over 125 miles, so 144 at SPT would be my longest ride ever, which I wasn't that nervous about. I think in racing, you kind of forget how long you've been. It's more of a time thing instead of a distance thing at that point. And I had obviously done some endurance events that had taken 30 plus hours. So I wasn't really worried about an 8-hour ride again.
Your time at Steamboat was nearly identical to your Leadville time. I don't know if that's coincidence or just the way you are or just the way those two courses happen to set up. But which did you physically find to be more difficult?
Oh, Leadville, 100%. But that's because I think I just burned all my matches there. And I think that's most people's a method of doing this would probably be to go all out at Leadville and see whatever you have in the tank left for SPT, which was not a lot, but we did it. Those first three hours of SPT were just excruciating, though. I don't think I've ever experienced something like that. I got to the start maybe 5 minutes before the race started, and I kind of just threw my bike over the barriers and into the mix of people. And I was maybe 300 or 400 people back from the start. I think that saved me. I think I would have been a heck of a lot more demoralized had I started with the lead ladies, which a lot of the Leadboat girls did. And I ended up passing them later on. And we had this incredible group of women. It was insane. I've never been in an off-road race specifically with that many women. We had a group of, it had to have been 10 to 12 at one point of women together, working together in a gravel race. It was insane. And there was camaraderie. We were like, no women get left behind because we're racing for 20th. It didn't matter. And I mean, it matters. We were going fast. We weren't going slow by any means, but it was like, at this point, let's just finish this thing because and not to mention, so at that point, this was about mile 75 or so of SPT. There were 4 Leadboat women. The top 4 Leadboat women were all in that group.
You were all in the group. And so essentially, as long as you stayed together, the podium placing and order was more or less established.
Right.
And a launched attack would not really have had a chance of changing that.
No, there would have had to have been a separation early on, which there was, but it wasn't by anyone who it would have made a difference in the podium.
So, I mean, a pretty friendly and fun way to do something pretty remarkable, to finish something remarkable. And you got a chance to get introduced to and to introduce yourself to some pretty amazing racers. So you finish Steamboat Gravel, you are second in Leadboat, and you get a cool vest. I'd be wearing it all the time, everywhere.
I haven't ever taken it off, except today, obviously.
I'm currently wearing my 2,000-mile buckle Leadville. It's very painful to sit with. Yeah, never, ever. It keeps so, within an hour. Because, your mom and I are, of course, there, cheering for you. We thought we could come crew for you. Turns out you're not allowed to crew for folks. What I guess we should have done is ride with you, and then we could have handed you bottles on the fly. I understand that's a thing.
That's a thing, but nothing you want to get involved with right now, I'm afraid to tell you.
Right. As if we could have hung. Yeah. Anyway, but we were allowed to go to dinner with her afterward. And while we are sitting and waiting for a table, Melisa is getting a notification on, I think, a call or a text from someone saying, so what are your plans for 2020, the rest of 2021? Tell us a little bit about that. This is literally an hour after you are on that podium.
Yeah. So I guess probably for a little reference, the podium ceremony was interesting because we had the group of the 5 Leadboat women after, or I guess there were 2 groups. There was a group of the Leadboat men, the group of the Leadboat women, and they were kind of just waiting around for the podium ceremony. And we're standing there, and someone who perhaps works at SPT or was affiliated in some way comes up to our group and is like, who's this Melisa? Is she here? Because she recognized all the other girls on the podium. And I look over at Jasmine, who's the girl on 2024, and I was like, who happened to be standing with her manager, Nicola Cranmer. And I looked over at them and I was like, they probably think it's a typo. Like, who is this girl? She didn't really do this, did she? We've never heard of her. I just raise my hand and I say, right here. And they proceed with the podium ceremony. And anyway, that little interaction with the manager at Team 2024 actually turned into something else. And about an hour or so after SBT, I got a message on Instagram. I actually think I first got followed by Team 2024, which I thought was kind of weird. I mean, cool, but I was like, sweet. And then about an hour after that or so, I got a follow from the woman who I met, who is the manager. And she messaged me and asked me what my plans for 2021 or 2022 are.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I don't have any plans. I'm on this shop team. But that, not to be, I love my shop team and they've been great for me. It's really awesome. But I'm not under any kind of contract. And so it worked out. Actually, she asked me if I was under any contract for the rest of the year. And I said no. And so actually, I am currently on Team 2024.
Yeah, 2024 is a cool outfit, folks. If you haven't had a chance to go over and have a look at it, it's an interesting and neat and unique program that is, correct me if I'm wrong, Melisa, their goal is to find women's talent in cycling, coach them, and get them ready for big events, and hopefully find a few within that group who can make it to the Olympics. That's why they put their title as 2024. Their aim is the 2024 Olympics in Paris. And previously they've gone by 2020 and I think they go back to 2012 or something like that for the London Games. They've kind of kept this thing going for a while. So it's a really interesting and cool program that they've got running with some great success. If you go to the website, you'll find some names you recognize. An Armstrong is on there, a Kristen Armstrong, by the way, who is a gold medalist. The past Tokyo Games, you've got a gold medalist on your team as well. So very cool stuff. So I know it's getting ahead of the game here. I mean, they've obviously talked to you about a schedule so far. How have they laid out their ideas for you? What do they want to see you do?
Right. So a lot of it's going to be the same as what I have been doing. They gave me a lot of freedom in what I chose for what I wanted to be racing next year. And it'll be a mix of gravel and mountain bike endurance events, but it's not capped at that. I can be in any kind of XC race that I want to do. They're just really supportive of anything that I want to try to explore, either on the road, if it may go that direction, Zwift, and anything I want to do. They're just super supportive. It's awesome. They know how to, curate an athlete.
And have they discussed the Olympics with you? Has that even come up in conversation?
It has come up, but I think that's a little bit of a stretch for me. But maybe I just have never had those ambitions. I don't think I've ever thought that would be possible.
Let's talk about your progression then. I mean, the Olympics it is 3 years away. It is a big leap. I get that. But you've made big leaps. I mean, just look at what you've done already. So I guess my question is, you made these huge leaps in 2019, 2021 at Leadville. Now, the biggest steps may be done for you. Maybe it's smaller steps now. That just happens to athletes, right? You make those big improvements, and then it's kind of smaller ones. What do you think? What kind of improvements do you see on your immediate horizon?
The ability to explore more options, I think, is the biggest thing for me, because I have a certain level of fitness. I'm not sure if the gains will be huge, like you said, in progression and training in the next few years, just because it's all marginal at this point. But I think that having the opportunity to explore more options in different disciplines and just being exposed to a higher level or just a very high level in general of racing can also really help.
So if you had to pick, what would you be focusing on? What are the 2 or 3 number one races for you for 2022?
Well, Nicola's really interested in having me back at Leadville. Mm-hmm. So I will be there.
It seems obvious. It seems like an obvious one. So yeah, Leadville for sure. What else?
I will be at Unbound Gravel. So another big one. And I'll be at a few Belgian waffle rides. which
Cool.
I've done the Cedar City one, which I thought was really fun. I'm enjoying gravel more than I thought I would.
You were there with an incredibly talented, experienced group of women at the very front of the race. More toward the middle and back of the race, there was a surprisingly small number of women in the Leadville 100. Now, as someone who you came in through a lot of support, a lot of family interest into this race. I mean, you had a pretty wide open door to doing Leadville 100, but you probably also have talked with a lot of women who either in spite of encouragement or not getting encouragement aren't doing the race. What would it take for more women to do races like the Leadville 100, like Steamboat Gravel, like, the big kind of races where right now there are fewer than 10%, at big events like this?
Yeah, it's really unfortunate because while we've seen a bit of a growth, I think, in women's cycling, I'm not sure how the stats compare to other years, if there were perhaps more women at this year's Leadville. But yeah, you're right that the field grew deeper, but not necessarily bigger at Leadville this year. I think that this year is what it takes. Having more pros show up and showing what's possible and showing that we want to make a deep field. We want to make a big field at Leadville. It doesn't matter if you're fast or if you're just trying to finish under 12 hours, which is not just. That's incredible.
Everyone's excited to finish under 12.
I think that those are the most remarkable stories, are people who finish under 12. And I think that it's hard to have access to get into this. Like you said, the only reason I really got into it is because I have a family that's supportive and has been doing it forever.
There's work to be done from the promoter side. How about just in getting women interested in biking? What do you think what is the way to get women, whether in high school or in college or wherever, get them started?
I think there's a good move for this right now with NICA. I think NICA has been extremely successful in getting women onto bikes. And it's possible that NICA might be the gateway into getting women into Leadville, because once you kind of get the endurance bug, that's what some people who are racing these NICA events actually may be better at.
Well, again, congratulations on the contract, Melisa, with 2024. We'll be looking forward to all your upcoming events with that new team. Terrific stuff. Now, we've had pros on this race before, and the one thing we always like to do with our pros is get their hot takes for Leadville. These are kind of Leadville bullet questions, if you will. So short answers, but very much Leadville specific and very much you. So these are Melisa's hot takes for the Leadville Trail 100. What is, Melisa, your favorite part of the LT 100 course?
Powerline descent. Easy.
I knew she would say that. Do you have the QOM on that?
I don't think I do.
Okay.
I have it on Keevins. That's all. Second favorite, Keevins descent. Love that one.
Least favorite part?
That road section between Pipeline and Fish Hatchery. It's horrible. Headwind, crosswind.
Yeah.
Terrible. Flat. Awful. You're tired. You can see Powerline. It's horrible.
Yeah.
It's worse than Powerline itself when you can just watch it. Because when you're on Powerline, at least you're moving forward you're closer to being at the top.
Maybe one of those areas you have to learn to embrace. You never know. You got to face those demons and go, okay, I'm going to make you my friend and get me on the podium. Okay, here's one, a long-standing question we've had on this show. No reason a new pro can't embrace this question. Hardtail, this is for Leadville now, hardtail or full suspension?
I have done the Leadville 100 on both hardtail and full suspension. I've done it fastest on a full suspension. But I am not very picky. I am one of those people that just likes to be on a bike. And it doesn't matter what the bike is. And I don't really notice components very much. I'm happy.
So what is one thing every racer should know or do?
Eat. Eat a lot and eat early but not too much, I guess. Don't eat too much.
Eat early, eat often, don't stuff yourself. Good answer.
This is a new question here, too. I don't know if you know what a walk-up song is, either of you. In fact, walk-up songs are used in baseball. When baseball players are coming to bat, they got a song played for them, right? And the player gets to choose their song. So, for instance, they announce the batter, now batting, blah, 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 and they play some type of song that the player likes. So, Melisa, if they were doing call-ups for you and they had walk-up songs, what would your walk-up song be?
This one has context because I have a very favorite song that I play to pump myself up, and I've used it countless times, but I'm not sure that it's a typical one. Cowboys from Hell by Pantera is my walk-up song.
Over the line, so we stand tall. Nobody touches us at all. Shout out, shoot out, spread fear of it without us. Even that tank walks off the well. Spread the word throughout the land.
Wow, that's rough. I think Rebecca Rush uses some type of thrash metal and maybe a Pantera song herself for her interval workouts.
I've played that song on repeat for intervals before, so it doesn't get old for me.
There you go. Howdy, what is your walk-up song?
It's Melissa by the Allman Brothers.
Oh, nice.
I don't know either of the songs that you two are doing. I will finish by saying that my walk-up song would be Fat and Proud by Stereogram. Melisa, not Melissa. Fantastic having you on the show. Incredible gains in 2021. Looking forward to seeing what 2022 brings you.
Thank you.
Another big thanks to Team 2024 Pro Melisa Rollins for joining us.
Oh, it is so cool to be able to say Team 2024 Pro in association with my daughter. I'm super proud of her, obviously, for this and for a lot of things, but for sure on the answer she just recently gave on that question you asked on the one thing every racer should know or do. Eat, eat, eat. It is incredibly crucial advice to any endurance racer.
And while we didn't bring this up in the interview, in addition to the advice of staying on your nutrition and hydration plan in the race, Melisa shares our nutrition sponsor, The Feed.
Yep. Another reason I like these guys. Great product, incredible service. They know how to pick good podcasts to sponsor, and they know how to pick great athletes. I am stoked that in addition to the Team 2024 kit she will be wearing, Melisa is going to be racing with a logo on her helmet that says The Feed.
Like us, Melisa knows The Feed is obviously the best place to get the nutrition you're going to train and race with easily, automatically, and at a great price. Go to thefeed.com/Leadville to sign up for a 15% discount on all your orders.
Howdy, before we close this show, I've got a little story for you from the Park City Point to Point. Melisa's first race on Team 2024.
Yeah, I did see that Melisa took the second spot on the pro podium behind Evelyn Dong. So congrats to Melisa on her first race and first $1,000 payday as a racer for Team 2024.
Yeah, she finished about a half hour behind Evelyn, though, which is a little slower than you would expect. But the story why is great. So I want to take you back to the finish line where the Hammer and I were waiting to cheer Melisa on. And in comes Evelyn, 7 hours and 30 minutes, I think, on the nose into the race. And from what we had heard from friends on the course, we expected Melisa to be about 9 minutes or so behind her. So 9 minutes comes and goes, then 10 minutes, and Lisa begins to freak out. She's worried that her daughter has crashed or had a mechanical or a flat or a bonk. All kinds of scenarios are running through her head.
So crash, flat, bonk, which was it?
It was none of them. The reason she was this far back was actually much weirder and more awesome. So as Lisa and I are standing there, we realized that since Evelyn has crossed the finish line, basically nobody else has crossed the line. So 15 minutes goes by, and then 20, and then 25 minutes, and there are no finishers at all crossing. So finally, about half an hour in, Melisa and 20 male racers appear out of nowhere, flying down the trail and crossing the finish line, and I swear, within 5-10 seconds of each other. like a tap had been turned off and then turned back on.
Well, something happened out there. What was it?
Yeah. So more or less right behind Evelyn with 10 minutes left in the race, so very close to the end of the course. The most Park City thing ever happens, which is to say a moose and its baby wander onto the trail in front of the racers, and then Mama Moose proceeds to lay down. Jeez. So it begins bottling up Melisa and all of the racers behind her, and they just start stacking up behind the moose. And, and so they had to do what anyone who's ever ridden in Park City more than a couple of times has had to do, which is you just get off your bike and you wait for the moose to move on. You don't want to threaten a moose. And so they all waited there, for Melisa for about 20, 25 minutes. And different people, however long it took them, around that amount of time or a little less. And the moose finally gets bored of people in Lycra yelling at it, and it gets up and it walks away.
Well, the moose definitely has seniority, and as I understand it, moose have the right of way on single track. And if you're going to get held up by something during a race, a moose would be a pretty great animal to have to wait for.
Yeah, I just hope that she got some photos.
Me too. Well, let's wrap up this episode, but not the season. We will be back with more stories because there are more to tell.
Yeah, and for now, you can hear from me and from Hottie on social media. I am on Twitter at Fat Cyclist. Hottie is on Instagram at Michael Houghton. Of course, we're both on Facebook. It is the Leadville 100 mountain bike participants page you want to look for. If you want to have a conversation, you can join our Slack channel, and you will find a link to it over at leadville100podcast.com.
If you like the show, go to wherever you listen and give us a 5-star rating and write a review. To see all the ways you can find the show, it is pod.link/Leadville.
Yeah, and please tell your racing friends too. That's actually the very nicest thing you can do to help us spread the word about our little independent podcast.
Good luck in your riding, racing, and recovery. Thanks for listening, and we will see you at the 2022 starting line.
Bring it home, bring it home, bring it home. Nice ride, Melisa. Congrats on a big, big day, sneaking in that top 10 in the overall women.